610. The Arabian Peninsula, inhabited by numerous Arab tribes, although it bordered on the two greatest empires of that time, the Roman and Persian, was considered a wild, unremarkable place. But it was at this time that a new religion was emerging on the Arabian Peninsula, Islam, whose followers would crush the Persian Empire and deprive the Roman Empire of a significant part of its possessions. In 610, the Prophet Muhammad began to actively preach Islam in his hometown of Mecca, and his first followers began to appear. Time passed and the number of followers of the new religion grew confidently, which, of course, did not please the aristocrats of Mecca. Fearing that with the growing number of followers of Islam, Muhammad would be able to claim power over the city, local leaders decided to prevent this scenario at all costs. Observing the discontent of the Mecca authorities, local followers of Islam, fearing for the life of the Prophet, persuaded him in 622 to move to the city of Medina, located near Mecca, which in those days was called Yathrib. It should be mentioned that the inhabitants of Medina positively perceived the new religion, therefore, after the followers of Islam from Mecca moved after their Prophet to Medina, the first Muslim community was formed in the city. Since many residents of Medina began to convert to Islam. Soon, the Islamic community of Medina became quite large, and the followers of the Prophet had the opportunity to attack the caravans of the Quraysh tribe that ruled in Mecca. There are two main explanations for the attack specifically on the caravans of the Quraysh, since the followers of the Prophet did not touch the caravans of other tribes. The first version states that the attacks on the Quraysh caravans were revenge for the oppression that the followers of Islam experienced while living in Mecca. According to the second version, the first Muslims were forced to leave Mecca, leaving their property in the city, and attacks on Quraysh caravans allowed them to compensate for material damage. It does not matter for what reason the Islamic community of Medina attacked the caravans of Quraysh, but due to the discontent of the citizens of Mecca, the local authorities were forced to take measures to secure trade routes. The Quraysh tried to protect their caravans, but the Prophet's warriors carefully planned each attack, thanks to which they were lucky. In addition, the number of warriors in the Muslim community was growing rapidly, so they coped with the protection of caravans without much difficulty. This undeclared war continued until 624, when the Prophet Muhammad learned that a large caravan of Quraysh, led by Abu Sufyan ibn Harb, would soon return to Mecca from Syria. Since the caravan was guarded by no more than 40 Quraysh warriors, this should have been a regular attack, of which there were already many, but it turned out differently. The fact is that Abu Sufyan, having reached the borders of the Hijaz region, received information that his caravan would be attacked by Muslims. Without a moment's delay, he sent a messenger to Mecca so that the Quraysh would send an army to meet the caravan, which, according to Abu Sufyan's idea, was supposed to defeat the Muslims once and for all and force the Islamic community of Medina to abandon attacks on the caravans. To attack the caravan, Muhammad managed to gather 313 warriors, which was more than enough for a successful attack, since the caravan guard consisted of only 40 warriors. When the preparations were completed, a small army led by the Prophet set off along the road to Mecca, sending scouts to report the approach of the caravan. Meanwhile, the Quraysh managed to assemble a much larger army, consisting of 1,300 warriors. This army hastily moved towards the village of Badr, planning to reach the aid of the caravan before the Muslim attack. On the way, the Quraysh army received news from Abu Sufyan that the caravan had not been attacked by the Muslims and had successfully reached Mecca. The Quraysh were already planning to return home, but Abu Jahl was against it. He insisted that the Quraysh army should reach the village of Badr and arrange a feast there, thereby showing the Muslims and all neighboring tribes their superiority. Not all Quraysh warriors agreed to this proposal and, despite Abu Jahl's threats, 300 warriors decided to return to Mecca. Meanwhile, Muhammad convened a military council to develop a further plan of action. Despite the fact that the situation has changed and instead of a caravan with a small guard, the Muslims are confronted by a numerically superior enemy army, at the military council it was decided to continue moving towards Badr and prepare for the upcoming battle. By the morning of March 11th, both armies were about a day's march from each other. The Muslim warriors sent on reconnaissance managed to find the Quraysh camp and at the same time remain unnoticed. Thus, the Islamic army had an important advantage, which was that they knew exactly where the enemy was, while the Quraysh did not have information about the whereabouts of the Muslims. The Muslim army, having reached the outskirts of Badr, managed to occupy the well closest to the Quraysh camp, and also, under the cover of darkness, block or destroy other wells located nearby. Thus, the only access to water was in the hands of the Muslim army. In turn, the army of Quraysh, which was confident in its strength, did not conduct reconnaissance, because it believed that the Muslims would not risk starting a confrontation, but upon learning that they were in the minority, they would return to Medina. Therefore, on the morning of March 12, a very unpleasant surprise awaited the Quraysh. When Quraysh warriors tried to replenish water supplies in one of the wells, they were fired upon by Muslim warriors. Since it was not possible to get to the source of water, the Quraysh had to act. After conducting reconnaissance, they learned that the Muslim army did not plan to retreat, but instead prepare for battle. At a hastily held military council for the Quraysh, opinions were divided. Some warriors advocated retreating in order to attack the Muslims later, taking up more advantageous positions. Although the Quraysh were at a disadvantage due to their lack of access to water, Abu Jahl was able to convince all members of the military council to attack the Muslim camp using their numerical advantage, planning to secure the trade routes with a victory. On the morning of March 15, two armies ready for battle lined up opposite each other. According to the tradition that existed in those days, several duels were held before the battle, most of which were won by the Muslims. After the duels were completed, the archers took over, raining down arrows on the enemy positions. At the same time, the Quraysh warriors began to attack. Since the distance between the armies was small, the Quraysh quickly reached the ranks of the Muslim army and imposed hand-to-hand combat on it, but despite their numerical advantage, their onslaught was not able to put the enemy to flight. The Muslims fought fiercely and were able to hold their positions. Realizing that if the Muslims continued to defend, the enemy's numerical advantage would soon bring him victory. Therefore, the Prophet ordered his people to launch a counterattack by first throwing dust into the enemy's eyes while shouting, "Let these faces be disfigured." Some sources claim that Muslim wars shouted, "Embarrassment will seize their faces." It is impossible to say exactly what the Muslim wars shouted, but nevertheless, the actions of the Muslims caused confusion in the ranks of the Quraysh warriors. The Muslim counterattack was very effective. They managed not only to push the enemy back from their position, but also to put him to flight. The Battle of Badr lasted only 2 hours, but its results transformed the Muslim community from a religious community into an army that all neighboring tribes had to reckon with. According to available data, the Muslims lost only 14 warriors in the battle, while the Quraysh lost 70 warriors killed and 70 warriors captured. However, the captured Quraysh soon returned to Mecca in exchange for a ransom, and the proceeds allowed the Muslim community of Medina to strengthen and become much stronger than neighboring tribes. Despite the defeat at Badr, the Quraysh were still a formidable military force, so their confrontation with the Muslim community continued. At the same time, the news of the Muslim victory over numerically superior opponents spread throughout all the surrounding tribes, which led to a rapid growth in the size of the Muslim community of Medina, as more and more people accepted the new religion. Time passed and the growing influence of the Muslim community in Medina only intensified, thanks to which in 630 the Prophet Muhammad managed to establish control over Mecca with virtually no resistance. After this event, Islam began to rapidly spread among Arab tribes in all corners of the Arabian Peninsula. Already by 632, a single Islamic state was actually formed on the Arabian Peninsula, which, having strengthened a little, was able to challenge the two most powerful empires of that time, the Byzantine and Persian. From this moment on, the period of Islamic conquests began, which had a huge impact on world history. Thus, a small battle by modern standards could determine the fate of the Middle East, as well as many neighboring territories, for several centuries to come. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on the bell so you don't miss new videos.